Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Source of Resource. My name is Michelle. I'm an astrologer, a mom, an artist, and I'm here to talk to you today about the transit of Jupiter in Taurus. So you can find me, as always, at astrologywithmichelle.com. This transit began recently, and as I've been kind of meditating and preparing, I kept hearing Spirit say, you're going to teach a class. And it's going to be called the Source of Resource, and been thinking a lot about what that is. And it occurred to me that that is the phase and the growth and the evolution that's being invited here in this time of Jupiter and Taurus. We're just a few days as of this recording away from Jupiter conjunct the North Node. And for those familiar with astrology or not, the North Node, the nodes of the moon, have been transiting the sign of Taurus now for just about, 16 months or so. We're a few months away from the shift of the nodes, but the North Node is in the sign of Taurus, and Jupiter ingressing is moving very, steadily towards this conjunction with the North Node. This particular conjunction begins a new phase of growth. It applies in the coming days around May 30th. The conjunction's exact the 30th, 31st, and then it'll be separating or beginning the new phase in June 1st and 2nd. So this is a really beautiful and potent window, intensifying this strong call of this phase of growth. Now, we've had a lot of strong call of phase. If you listen to my week ahead video or any of the other talks that I've given on the EA Zoom channel, I've been speaking a lot about the phase of soul evolution and growth that we're in right now. We have Pluto in the sign of Aquarius, Jupiter squared Pluto right as it entered the sign of Taurus. We have Mars in the sign of Leo, and they perfected this T-square this week, which I talked about in the week ahead video, which you can also find on the EA Zoom channel. And that to me is signifying a very deep and powerful and instinctual phase of soul growth. Now, what are we talking about when we're talking about Pluto? We're talking about soul level desires. What's Jupiter magnifying? The desires that we have for growth in the Taurus area of our house, right? The Taurus house in your birth chart, what we're also connected to in that Taurus house is the phase of Venus. And I spoke in a previous class on love evolution, how I'm relating this phase of Venus to the phase of Pluto as far as our evolutionary growth. Well, now we have a beginning in this particular time of a phase of growth that has to do with Jupiter expansion and Taurus, and we have Mars making that T-square, really intensifying that which we desire, that which we are driven to. And when we're talking about Taurus, very much it can be about self-reliance, pleasure, embodiment, self-trust, self-value. It can be about our value in our career, work, money, right? These are Venus, Taurus themes, possessions, things that we have, things that we are here to grow, things that we are developing in. And that phase of growth is being initiated at this particular time. Now it's going to go through a refining process later on this year, and that'll be during the time of the Jupiter retrograde. The retrograde archetype, just as a footnote, the retrograde archetype indicates increased soul evolution, right? Intensification of the evolutionary process. And In this particular case, what I find very fascinating about the Jupiter retrograde is that it follows the same degrees that we just experienced during the Mercury retrograde, right? 5 degrees to 15 degrees Taurus. So Jupiter is going to make its transition right now, applying to the North Node at 3 degrees, and then it will enter the shadow of that time and move forward all the way to 15 degrees and then station retrograde September 4th. It's important to keep in mind that that retrograde station happens in a window of a couple of things. It happens after the Venus retrograde has already begun, and it happens during really a season that had been filled with retrogrades. Pretty much every planet up until Jupiter stations retrograde is in a retrograde phase, and it happens closely connected to Mercury in its next retrograde cycle, which will be in the sign of Virgo. And that retrograde will go all the way until December 3rd. So we'll spend really the latter part of this year, the sort of fall Virgo time, in a retrograde phase of evolution with Jupiter. This is an important period of time because it has to do with refining that growth, right? Right now, we may be gearing up to bring a lot of things, right? Jupiter brings expansion, growth, optimism. It brings new opportunities. It brings evolution into that Taurus house and connected to Venus, connected to where that Taurus house is in your chart. And then, we might have a lot of ideas, right? Like, for example, for myself, Taurus is the 10th house for me. And I feel so much energy coming into my career, so many different ideas, so many different opportunities, so many desires for growth that I have. And as a part of that evolution, there is learning, there is growth, there is abundance, there are resources that are coming in with that growth. Right. And then there will be a period of time during the end of this year, the latter part of this year, where there will be refining, redefining, revision, working through issues, obstacles, blocks, releasing often opportunities that are not aligned, and really getting clear about what we are growing. And Jupiter's phase, in terms of its timing and its cycle, is 12 months in a sign, so a year. So Jupiter will leave the sign of Taurus a year from today, and it's a 12-year cycle until it comes back around to that point. So if you were born with Jupiter in Taurus, you'll be having a Jupiter return during this time. And that is an important 12-year cycle, in particular to what we're growing, right? Growing in Taurus, safety, stability, growing what we've been growing along that nodal axis, the evolutionary journey of our personal resources, our personal values, our identity around money, love, even relationship to self-value, our relationship to others, our relationship to our resources, what we've been growing along that, the oppositional part of that Taurus continuum, which is the Scorpio, releasing, right? Releasing old patterns from the past, releasing old fears, releasing old karmas relative to money, resources, and where we have been dependent or insecure or in a lot of fear around our financial security, stability. I would say also the Scorpio release has to do with where we have become entangled or enmeshed in relationships and people, money, situations, where we've gotten caught in the shadow of Jupiter, in the shadow of our relationship to growth and finances. And if we think about it, that continuum is also pointing to the place where the compost is. One of my favorite Jeffrey Wolf Green quotes is, if we tend to the roots, the branches will take care of themselves. And I think about this Taurus-Scorpio axis as being a very prime example of that, right? If we get to the roots of our fears of financial insecurity, our emotional and sexual entanglements, our physical embodiment becomes strong, healthy, beautiful. Our resources, if we get to the roots of where we have been engaged in or learned patterns of shadow, or where we have been hurt or betrayed around money, resources, sexuality, if we heal those things, we often find ourselves growing out of those traumas and dramas into healthy senses of self, healthy senses of relationship to resources, healthy valuing of what we have and what we are growing, healthy understandings of our physical body, right? And this can apply to any area of our life, right? You would look to your own personal soul evolution, your own personal growth, and your own personal releasing process to to really gain insight into what's being magnified and expanded. And bottom line, Jupiter brings lessons in the form of blessings, in the form of often things that can be disguised even as downfalls, even as disappointment. You know, um, there's a phrase that I love, all that glitters is not gold, because if we identify with something outside of us and we say, oh, that's, that's the thing that I'm working towards, that I want, that I love, and our happiness or our financial stability or our peace of mind or our value is based on that thing, right? Then if we lose that thing, we can become devastated, or our stability, our peace of mind, our personal understanding of self can be deeply impacted by that loss. And in that learning, as this is more of a Neptune-esque part of the Jupiter lesson, but in that learning or that disillusionment, there can be a, a deepening of understanding about what is valuable in our lives. There can be a deepening understanding of what is really true for us, right? Jupiter, the lesson then becomes not to chase all of the shiny objects, because we won't end up getting any of them, right? If we plant a bunch of seeds in the earth, but then we don't tend to them, right? Nothing will grow. If we plant a bunch of seeds, but then we dig them up just to check on them to see how they're doing, they won't grow. If we plant a bunch of seeds, but the conditions in our life are not right for those seeds to grow, then they won't grow. If we plant and then we grow something and we realize, oh God, this is more than I can deal with. This is more than I can take care of. I've amassed more than I know what to do with. Then there is a very core learning that ultimately comes to us through the process of refining, right? And I was saying just before we began this call, I think there's 3 ways of dealing with Jupiter growth or Jupiter stuff, right? We can have a lot of stuff, and we can choose to hold on to it because we're afraid that it's not, that we might use it in the future. I've been reflecting on this a lot lately, like all these things that I have that I'm like, oh, that's valuable. I want to keep that. I don't want to let that go. Oh, I might need that in the future, and then we hold on to it. Or we can look at that same stuff and see like, oh, what about this resource is valuable that I might sell, or that I might create something, that I might make something, that I might do something with this that brings in value in a way that I can use, right? If you're holding on to stuff, but then you realize, oh, I could sell this stuff and bring in resources. Now I have money to do the thing that I wanted to do, like go travel, or I have money to do to invest in the thing I want to invest in, like my computer or my work, or, or now I have money in the bank, right? More financial stability, instead of I'm just holding this thing. Or we can do the other thing, which is the third thing, which is we can share it, right? If you plant a huge garden and you're overwhelmed with this abundance of fruits and vegetables that are coming because of the hard work and the Jupiter thing of planting all these seeds, and then you share it with your neighbors, and you share it with your friends, or you have my friend just reached out to me and was like, I'm going to have this huge garden, would you like to participate in a CSA? And it's a way for me to support a woman farmer and get the groceries, the veggies that I would otherwise eat for my family every week. And it supports her livelihood and her family. That's a very Jupiter and Taurus. And these things are ways that we can participate in the phase of growth, and through that learn different Jupiter lessons, right? Jupiter at the end of the day always leaves us with two things. It leaves us with a lesson, a deeper understanding of something, and it leaves us with the growth or the wisdom of that which came in that was for the long term, right? 12-year cycles, 12 years, 24 years, right? Multiply that. This is not, and especially with Jupiter and Taurus, this is about really the evolution and refining of long-term values and long-term growth. I often think about one of these quotes that says the result of overnight success. I'm paraphrasing. This is a Jupiter thing. The result of overnight success is like a 10-year journey. What we do takes a long time to ultimately come to fruition. If you want fruit trees to grow, the average fruit tree takes about 10 to 15 years to reach development of maturity, where it's really producing larger volumes of mature fruit. Some trees won't even produce fruit for the first several years, right? You have to plant those things now. When I look for real estate or properties, I look to see, do they have fruit trees planted on the land? Because the person who owned that property had to think in advance and very strategically be invested in the long-term growth of that thing, especially with things that are relatively new or that are just coming out right now. Those things may take a long time in this kind of economy, in this kind of market, in order to reach a phase of maturity that will produce fruit. It's like if you're starting something new in your business, initially you might not have very many people signing up for that thing, or following your work, or knowing who you are. But if you continue to cultivate the growth of what it is that you really value, that you really love, the long-term result will be, one, greater maturity. That's the Saturn piece of it. But through wisdom, through growth, through the learning, the lessons. So Jupiter brings lessons, and Jupiter brings journeys. Jupiter brings expansion that takes us somewhere, that brings us to a next level of evolution in our life. It brings teachers and people that we can learn from who will help our expansion journey. So that's another thing to look for in this time of the Jupiter transit is who are the teachers that are teaching the thing that I want to learn? Who are the people that are demonstrating the values that I want to? If I want to grow my own fruits or vegetables, who are the people who have mastered Saturn and Jupiter and have expanded what I would desire to grow? That's been one way that I've always found my way into more growth. I found people that I can really look to who are developed in that way, who have grown themselves to a certain level of success, or who know themselves, or who have already gone on that journey, right? And it doesn't take much for someone to be just a little bit further ahead in their evolutionary process, and you can be walking with them. This is a part of how I work in my own process as an astrologer. I continue to grow myself in the soul work that I'm called to do, and I continue to share that, and I continue to learn and develop and expand what I'm doing, and then I continue to grow into that. And this, whatever this phase of growth is that's beginning for you, this particular window of time right now in this next week is a big kickoff. It's like a rocket ship launching us in the direction, which will then really take the next year to grow and develop, the next 12 years, and potentially the next, we might call it the next 20 plus years, with the nodes of the moon, their cycle is 18 years, Jupiter's cycle is 12 years. So this is the beginning of a longer term journey of growth and development. I'm going to share a little bit more about the themes of this Jupiter learning. We're talking about learning, growing, and wisdom. I said you walk away from Jupiter with two things, the learning and the journey. Maybe it's three things, the growing, because on some level, whatever Jupiter brings into your life will grow in a way, or will grow. It'll grow the wisdom that you have, it will grow the resources that you have, it will grow the learning, or it will grow your capacities, whatever you are growing in that Taurus house. This can include sources of wealth, abundance. It can also grow issues with money. If you have had underlying issues with receiving, with managing your finances, with having, or with hold, right? Taurus is about having, right? Scorpio is about possessing. Taurus is about holding and embodiment. And so if there have been issues relative to values, having, holding, being a Taurus person, being embodied, or if there have been Venus issues, relationship issues, that Jupiter can expand those issues and bring more. If there are lessons, if there is work to be done, if there are evolutionary leaps that we need to make, Jupiter can bring in the teachers, the wisdom, the themes that we need in order to master long-term and grow and develop. And ultimately, Jupiter can bring us on the journeys, take us on the journeys to the places where we need to find this connection to our growth, to our value, to our capacity to be what's the word deserving of resource, deserving. And interestingly enough, there's certain things that the earth demonstrates for us, right? Taurus, earth, the earth demonstrates for us really beautifully generosity, oxygen, is freely offered. Water and growth happens prolifically, right? It just, Mother Nature loves to give, right? Even life itself is a reflection often of that abundance. Part of what we're learning with that abundance is, how do we work with it? How do we manage it? How do we understand it, right? These are more Saturn themes. And how do we remove the Pluto conditioning around desire and the shadows? How do we attend to the shadows of these things? Because money inherently is not a bad thing. What has happened in our system is that capitalism, consumption, greed, domination, these things have destroyed, right, our resources. They've destroyed the earth. They've destroyed our relationship to the earth. They've destroyed our connection, even to being in relationship with one another. They've commoditized and compartmentalized the values of human beings into possessions, into stuff, into all sorts of identities that have ultimately brought forth a lot of suffering, a lot of sickness, and a lot of challenge in the world. We can see with Pluto, both with Pluto in Aquarius and with Pluto in Capricorn, the shadows of how those structures of domination and oppression and have really brought our economy, our values, our money, and our resources into a place that can easily become toxic, where 99% of the wealth in the world is possessed by 1% of the people, right? 99% of the people on the earth have 1% of the wealth, right? That's a very huge imbalance in our culture, in our society, in our world, that has created vast differences between poverty, between having and have-nots, right? This is the Taurus-Scorpio shadow. This is also a part of the Pluto shadow of wealth and abundance. A lot of those themes may emerge during this time. One of the things I was recently hearing was about the housing market and how confidence in the housing market is decreasing because interest rates have increased, and it's made the monthly payment based on the interest rate 50% higher than it was 2 years ago. So that means either the same amount of money cannot buy you the same amount of house, but if property values have also increased, it means that a vast majority of people who would have been able to buy a house 2 years ago are now priced out of housing. That also translates into the rental market. But right, that's a Jupiter in Taurus thing. Both the expansion of the interest rates and the expansion of the value of land. And so ultimately, those things will come through the evolutionary process brought forward by the shadows. Excess, overgrowth, too much stuff, too much spending. I said keeping up with the Joneses, but that could be like overspending, overvaluation. These things will need to find their correction. And Taurus relates to the sign of the bull, which is also the sign of the stock market. And I'm a former financial advisor. I spent 10 years in banking and before becoming an investment advisor and a certified financial planner. And, in my total time in the finance industry over 15 years, I learned how to prepare taxes. I ran my own bookkeeping business. I started a business, sold a business. I grew to being one of the largest financial advisors in my company, managing over $55 million. I did all these things with money. it was a time in my life where I made the most money I'd ever made, and I also saw some of the deepest issues that relate to money and wealth and abundance, and both in my own personal life and through direct experience and through working with hundreds of clients during that time around money and wealth and emotional issues, predominantly with women and a lot with women who had inherited wealth. And so one of the things that I learned during that time is that both our perceptions, this is a Venus thing, our perceptions of wealth, our desires around money, our beliefs and our ideas, and the emotional conditioning or the imprinting that we received early on around money have more to do with what we feel, what we do, how we work with the wealth that we have than the actual amount of resources that we have. There are people who have very little, but use it very wisely, feel very rich in their relationships, feel very secure in what they have. And there are people who have a lot, more than enough money to last them lifetimes and feel very insecure, very alone, and very empty relative to what they have. So the quantity is not equal to the quality. And in relationship to Jupiter expansion, too much is not always a good thing. I have this quote that my partner Ari Moshe introduced me to, and um, and it says, "Less is more, nothing is everything." Right? Less is more, nothing is everything, and it really points to a wisdom that can come out of the Jupiter excess. Right? Less is more when we refine the possessions that we have to have what we truly love and value. Less is more, and nothing is everything. Right? We can have things that break down, that that don't, you know nothing is everything in that the bottom line truth of who we are, right? Nothing is everything. We can give too much power to things like money and possessions and lose all that money and possession and realize like that's not who we are. These kinds of lessons can be coming through all different things. We can overvalue something and never be able to sell it. But if something is priced right, or if it's valued right, then it's an immediate match to what we're trying to create. And that's the wisdom of Jupiter: alignment of our values, Venus, integrity, and alignment to the higher truth of who and what we are, where we are going, the journey that we're on, the soul journey. So, let me see. I think I'll pause there, and if there are any questions. Wonderful. So one of the things that I'm offering coming up this Friday is a masterclass on Jupiter and Taurus, on wealth and abundance and finances in the natal chart. The live class will be on Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It is recorded, and so if you're unable to make the live class, you can join me and still receive the recording. But for you to make the most of the class, and there's an opportunity to work with your birth chart in the live class, you can do that by attending the live transmission. In that class, I'll be giving a deeper transmission into the Jupiter archetype. And then we're going to go through Jupiter in the houses. We're going to go through the soul evolution of the houses that relate to money and finances. So this is the second house, the eighth house. We'll also tune in to Jupiter and Venus as they relate to the other houses and connect to. So, for example, fourth house and 10th house connecting to second house and eighth house. And I'll be really touching into all of the themes of how in our life and in our work and in our growing and our learning, how we can use this Jupiter time for the year ahead, but not just that, for our lifetime, right? To make the most of these positions in our natal chart. And I'm offering this class in a special way that I've never done before, but felt like a new and fun thing to do. Pick your price or pay what you want option. So there are 3 pricing levels that are pick your price. You pick what feels good to you within your means, what maybe feels generous or aligned, knowing and understanding that, one, you're supporting a woman-owned business, you're supporting a mother of 3, you're supporting your own growth and evolution, you're supporting the growth of your values and what you value and what you want to build and birth and bring forward in your life in this time and in the coming years ahead. And then there is an option on the pay what you want, that if money is an issue or if resources are challenged at this time, you can choose any amount that feels good to you, right? No one is prevented from the growth of life, from the growth of your soul. And I really want to create a space that is inclusive of all people in all means. There are times in my life as a single mom that I really relied upon the generosity of other people, especially when it came to studying astrology and things, doing soul work, that it was because people were willing to support me to come in at a means and a level that I was at, that I was able to do those things. And I really value making classes and all the work that I do incredibly inclusive to people of all levels and all means, both in terms of your level of astrological learning and your level of means. And all of my students always get an additional discount if you're one of my core in my evolution student membership or in my Love Evolution class series, you automatically get a discount on the class. So I will be covering in this master class the core houses that reflect sources of wealth, abundance, issues with money, the planetary rulers that relate to finances, income, and things that we own. This is beyond Jupiter. This I'll go into more depth than just Jupiter. The evolutionary process brought forward by the transit of Jupiter in Taurus. Even on a deeper level, we'll be talking about some of the core dynamics within the shadows. This is really like coming down to those pieces of owning worth, worthiness, growing from our values, growing what we love, growing what is most important to us in this time. I'll go deeper into the retrograde time of Jupiter and Mercury by looking at the transits and seeing how they relate to changes in the collective and changes that we may need to make, adjustments. If we're looking at making decisions in our life and how we relate to financial decisions, I'll be talking a lot about how we make wise financial decisions, how we stay grounded during a time of growth, how we do the pruning and the fine picking and the refining time so that we can really make the most of this opportunity. And you'll have the opportunity in the live class to apply these teachings to your personal chart. If that's something that you would like to join me in, I would absolutely love to have you there. And again, I want to stop the share for just a second and share the chart, because this time is a really powerful time. You know, when we're thinking about the world that we live in, the resources that we have, the life that we want to live, this is one of the most profound periods of evolutionary growth, not just on a collective level, right? We have um, growth in all things, but everything ultimately boils down to how do we grow what we love in our own lives? And that contributes to the collective level. How do we grow so that we are spending more of our time creating from the love that we are, creating the life that we desire? How do we grow from our values where we're really invested in nourishing, caring for, and protecting that which is most important to us? Right? That's what this transit is essentially asking of us. And if we watch with Jupiter, in the coming days, this foundational place of evolution is bringing about a challenge, right? This grand square between and for the most part, it's already formed in that the Pluto square to Jupiter and Mars has already perfected. The you know, the conjunction is moving and building, and with that, Jupiter and Mars are still in really close. But it's like all about what do we desire to grow? And in order to grow something that's really truly aligned with who we are and our values, we are being asked to shed old identities. We are being asked to cleanse and purify our life. It's like if we have been eating all kinds of foods that have expanded our body in a way that doesn't feel good, we might need to refine and cut out sugars and processed, fried foods and fatty things and like focus on good fats, really investing in good organic food, really investing in nutrient dense protein and things that are going to nourish and care for our body in the long term. It does mean letting go of the short term quick fix, right? Which would be the sugar rush or the caffeine, or it might mean like the thing that's convenient, the fast food. And we're moving towards slow food, slow nourishment, slow care. And that takes time. Building strength in our body takes time, right? If we have been spending our money in a way that has not been um, prudent and doesn't really invest in or save towards the thing that we want, right? If we want to feel financial security, if we want to feel a sense of abundance, we might have to let go of buying stuff that doesn't align with that. We might have to let go of saying yes to every short-term desire. But if we want to do something, if we want to make something, if we want to create something, we might have to invest in something valuable or something that we really deeply desire, right? Some of this Pluto work is about getting to the deepest part of our core desires, really finding and recognizing the places inside of us that have been undernourished and under supported, giving ourselves permission, letting go of guilt or shame or feelings or fears of the past. It's like, it's no fun to buy something that you enjoy or invest in something if you're going to walk around with it feeling guilty, right? We might have to let go of guilt or let go of a feeling of like, I don't deserve this. I'm not good enough, right? And what that can be to whatever it is that's happening in our life. If we want to grow our career or our relationship, we might have to let go of old ways of identifying around relationship and old identities around relationship, old fears, old losses, old betrayals from the past, and really invest in taking such good care of ourselves and loving our hearts like that. That's the focus of my love evolution class. It's about waking up the heart, awakening to the heart of the feminine, right? That has to be done first as an investment in ourselves before real love and relationship can blossom in our lives, right? That purification process is a part of this grand square. So anyway, that's a little mini example of how I tune into the chart of the present moment. I'll be doing a deeper dive transmission in our class on Friday, and I will be going into all of the different archetypal dynamics relative to Jupiter, relative to money and finance and resources. You can ask all your questions. And a part of what I'll be doing is really closing the class container with a ritual on this Jupiter North Node conjunction, a blessing, a prayer, and a calling for the abundance, the growth, and the lessons and the wisdom that is being developed in our lives. So if you feel called to join me for that class, I would love to see your beautiful face there, or to be able to send you the recording after the class. And at this time, if there are any questions, I will be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll complete this.
I see no questions.
Wonderful. Yeah, so I'll complete this transmission with a blessing. May all of the lessons that Jupiter brings illuminate the deepest truth within your life. May all that you grow in this time expand the beauty of who you are and your soul. May all that we grow together in this world continue to return to a state of reverence and devotion and love of the goddess, of the feminine, and of the mother that we all come from and that we all share together. So thank you so much for joining me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. That was lovely. We'll see you again next time.
Bye for now, my friends.